Wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna
Welcome back to the Talk to Solomon Show. I'm your in-studio guest host, retired Chief of Police Steve Davis. Also joined for this segment, we have the Commander, Stan Solomon. Stan, are you still with us?
I certainly am.
Great, glad to hear your voice. And also co-host Brent Johnson. Brent, are you still with us?
I sure am.
And then weekly, as we always love to have, this segment, we have Dr. Alan Keyes. Are you with us, Alan?
I'm here. How are you tonight, Chief?
I'm wonderful, wonderful. Great to see you. And this is my debut as the in-studio host, but I wanted to start this off with Twinkies. So we have
Well, I've been watching you for the last little while. You're doing a good job.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I have a great teacher, but this first story says that Twinkies maker Hostess lives at least another day, and so most people are aware that Hostess that makes Twinkies had a problem with their money, and so they wanted to work out a new contract with their employees, and because it's unionized, they had to deal with the union, and the union didn't like the deal, and so they told the employees to go on strike. So you have workers that are going on strike against a business that's failing. And then they pretty much failed, and the hostess went to court, and the judges said, no, you can't quit just yet because you haven't gone through private arbitration. And so along with this is another story that says Walmart, who's not unionized, but the Walmart workers plan a Black Friday protest. And so to me, this all barks of union and union problems. So Dr. Keyes, I'd like to start with you and tell us your thoughts on Twinkies and unions.
Well, I have to say that I guess I don't find it dismaying when I see give and take going on between unions and management, because I think that among the rights people have, there's a right to associate together as workers to try to maximize their ability to establish conditions of labor and pay and other things that are going to be to their liking. Obviously, when you watch that give and take, you reach a certain point where it starts to be apparent that if you actually allow things to operate on the basis of a relatively free ability to have this back and forth, eventually the mutual self-interest that underlies the whole business is going to start to operate. And I think that Twinkies folks in the union are coming up against that point right now. Well, let's see here. We can go on pushing for more in terms of things that will satisfy us from these jobs. And if we do, then we won't have these jobs. I think when things start to reach that point, you can probably be reasonably sure that not long thereafter, we're going to hear about how they've come to some sort of resolution. It is not that often that folks will see the cliff and say, okay, rather than come to some agreement that gives us 70% of what we wanted, we'll go over the cliff. And I think when you leave things to operate with that free give and take, I have no problem with it. I think that's just part of the freedom that people have to associate together. The only thing that's always bothered me, though, about what they've tried to do with unions in this country is they've tried to use political power to force people to give their money to and participate in unions and so forth. And there I think you are basically trying to pretend that it's okay to promote one right, which is this freedom of association, at the expense of what must always be the underlying premise of the exercise of right, which is that if you conscientiously believe that that's not the right thing for you to do, the other guy can't force you to do it. But I think operating in that kind of an environment, then you just have to take the result. They won't always be satisfying, especially not to people on the outside. They may at times not be very satisfying or even helpful to people who are part of that kind of give and take. But I think that one of the premises of human liberty is that up to a certain point, you've got to trust to the basic good sense, common sense, and rationality of people. And that may not always appear at first, because folks are going to also, have their stubbornness and have their strong desires. But I think if you allow freedom to operate, the end result is more likely than not to produce an outcome that's going to be livable.
Well, I like that view. Now, Stan Solomon, you're an astute businessman. When I saw this story, my thought was, my gosh, you got one union guy is not allowed to drive Twinkies and cupcakes together. Another union guy is not allowed to bake Twinkies and cupcakes together. And so wouldn't it have been a good start for the workers themselves to say, let's look at ourselves first and clean up our own mess before we try to make our boss pay us more money?
Well, obviously that's an astute observation and correct. But let's back up. What's the difference between a Twinkie and a Chevrolet? And the answer is, in the union mind, none. They believe that whether or not people can or will pay the price, whether or not the company can or will stay in business, that the only thing that should be considered is what they have, what they want to have, and what they think they should have. Now, what's happening with Hostess is that you have a dichotomy. You have one union, a powerful union, the Teamsters, who agreed because they want to keep their jobs, and another union, the Bakers, who didn't agree and said they would rather lose their jobs than lose the argument. Now, somehow, the Teamsters are moderates, the Bakers Union are liberals, and conservatives aren't even in this picture. So what we have is a $2.5 billion company with 18,000 employees that affect probably 150,000 other people surrounding their business that are all going to, and I believe that, as I understand now, go under because the owners who took the risk, who made the investment, can make more money by liquidating the company and selling off the assets than they can retain the company and losing money every year.
Well, Stan, can I...
that logic is hard for some people, especially those educated by our public school system, that think that profit is an evil thing, to understand. I'll leave it at that.
Can I intervene for a second here? Because I think Stan actually put his finger on something really critical.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, because there is, I believe, and I've for many years I have believed this, since the days when I was working on development issues in Southern Africa and so forth. I think the key to the whole situation is the sense of ownership. And the way in which you deal with that is not by trying to, implement government power to force unions to accept this or that agreement and therefore violate the basic freedom of association and right of association through which they are trying to pursue their basic interests. No, a better way would be to take the economic approach that transcends the distinction between the owners and the workers and the management and the workers by making sure that things are structured in such a way that people who work in an enterprise have a direct and tangible sense of ownership in that enterprise. And that's why I've long championed the ideas of expanded capital ownership, so that at the end of the day, we wouldn't have workers' management, workers' owners, because there would be a sense in which, through the right structuring of our economic activities, everyone would feel a sense of ownership. They'd have to think, as Stan just suggested, of the overall good of the situation. They'd have to see themselves in a tangible way, benefiting from the overall success of that enterprise, so that it wouldn't be this, I think, basically deceptive and self-destructive adversarial model, because it doesn't have to be that way.
There you go again, making sense. So let's go to Brent Johnson. Go ahead, Brent. What's your views? Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of comments first. And Alan, the problem is you can't make that happen. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, you can't enforce that. You can't have the government come in and say, "All right, this is the way it's going to be," because that would undermine independence and liberty. And with all due respect, the issue with unions, and you'll find this actually in Title I, Section 1 of the U.S. Code's general provisions, the very beginning of codified federal law. Unions are considered privileged organizations. They exist because Congress passed a law saying unions can exist. And if you're actually a member of a union, you have given up your individual right to make determinations in favor of the collective bargaining. And all of that is regulated as a privilege. And as a result, unions have become massive political hot potatoes. Now, I happen to believe that, yeah, there's nothing wrong with a bunch of people getting together and saying, let's collectively figure things out among our freedom of association. But unions aren't that. Unions are not under freedom of association. They are under the principle of government privileges and are regulated and controlled accordingly. And that inevitably leads to politicization of the union situation. And whatever they were intended to be originally, they are not that today. I am one of those people who's actually very opposed to unions because I think that people should negotiate their best deals for themselves. They should develop the sense of their own value and come out and say, look, I'm worth this and this is what you're going to pay me. But, of course, today we don't have that in America. People have no sense of their own worth, and so we have a real problem. I don't think unions are the answer.
Dr.
See, I don't think you can stop them, and I don't see why you would want to. The right to associate together is basic. A matter of fact, it's where I part company, I suppose, with a certain understanding of liberty and freedom. Liberty is not, by any means, and the founders did not believe that liberty consists in freedom from government control. I heard that a few minutes ago, and I said to myself, no, that's not accurate. That's not what they thought at all, because that is the state of nature without government, and it leads to anarchy, perpetual war, the war of all against all. It's a disaster. And the reason that you have civil society, people come together to deal with the terrible results that come from that kind of massive anarchy. The founders were familiar with that understanding of the development of human societies, and in fact embraced the view that it is preferable for people to come together, form a civil society based on an understanding of the right exercise of their liberty, and then constitute a government to guarantee that that right exercise of liberty would be protected from the depredations of those who do not respect right and conscience and the natural law. And this was all put forward in people like Locke. The very language he wrote in was used in the Declaration of Independence, and it is without doubt the understanding of liberty the founders implemented. Government was actually the result of the desire for true liberty, because in that anarchic state of nature, human beings cannot have any freedom from fear. They cannot have any freedom from violence. They must constantly be involved in the business of survival, and so they cannot, in fact, realize the fruits of God-intended liberty. To realize those fruits, they entrust certain powers to government, which otherwise they do have the right to exercise on their own, but here's the rub. When they do it on their own, it doesn't work out well. When they get together to do it on a basis of a common understanding of what is right, then they can make it work better. And I think in that respect, people coming together in unions is exactly why people came together in civil society. Because if you try to deal with it one by one, against folks who have no scruples, who have no morals, who have no conscience, you're going to be stomped into the ground. And so it's better for people who have kind of decent consciences and just are trying to lead decent lives to come together and say, okay, we're quite willing to talk to folks, but we want to do it on a basis that will assure them that they can't get away with treating us just in any way they please on account of what they believe is their superior power. So that right of association is actually the fundamental source of civil society. And government, just government, is an emanation of civil society. It comes from civil society. And this whole notion that somehow or another everything is all about just individuals doing what they please, that's nonsense. And the founders never
just a moment, Alan, I never said that.
I'm just saying, they didn't believe that. They didn't believe it would work.
No, but they did, by the way. I think you're misusing the term anarchy, because the founders were actually anarchists. Anarchy, monarchy is a single ruler. Oligarchy are many rulers. Anarchy is no rulers. In our society, the people are supposed to be the rulers, the sovereigns, and the government is supposed to be their public servant. The government serves the people and doesn't rule it. That is an anarchy,
No,
and
it's
it
not.
is not
No, it's
chaos
not. I'm sorry.
if it's done
I'm
correctly.
sorry. Brant, that's simply not the case, because the understanding that the founders explicitly worked with, and it was articulated in the Declaration, is that the people are in fact governed. They just don't have a human governor. They are governed by the laws of nature and nature's God, and they are governed by they're governed by the standard of God, and that standard of God is the endowment of right, which informs those actions which do not wrong others and which preserve our own lives and insofar as we can, the life of the whole species. This is all explicitly laid out in the thinking and reasoning that people like Locke did, that Jefferson actually quoted from in the Declaration, and so forth. So I think it's too simple to say it's anarchy. It's not anarchy, because to be ruled in conscience by God, and by the way, this is a borrowing, and not even a borrowing, it's an application of the concept of law and self-government articulated by St. Paul as the essence of Christianity. The law is not non-existent. There is a ruler, there is a law, it is the law promulgated by God through conscience, and the difference in the Christian understanding is that it's an indwelling principle. It's not imposed upon you by force, because you have accepted it from within as part of your vocation through Jesus Christ to relate to the Father in righteousness. And so that understanding was critical to their understanding of how self-government would work.
All right, I want to go to Stan Solomon again, the commander of this program. But before I do, I want to mention a couple of things I remember from recent history. We've had a couple of flip sides to this coin that have taken place. Several states have enacted right-to-work legislation, including Indiana and Wisconsin. And also we've had recently a major airline wanted to move one of their manufacturing plants from a union state to a non-union state in South Carolina. We're denied that by the federal government. So Stan, I'd like to talk to you first about this, and what are your thoughts about that? What should the government's role really be in all of this?
Well, that's a great question. First, let me say, Alan, I'm going to send you another Christmas card because you just earned it. All right. The role of government, and here Brent has said it very well, is to serve the needs and to protect the rights of the people. Now, not the right of one versus another. That's what government unfortunately has done based on both union activity and corporate activity and all kinds of other activity. But in fact, the role of government, as designed by the founders, is to protect the rights, serve the needs of the quote-unquote people in a way that is considered of the basic principles upon which this nation was based. So a government that intervenes for a particular group, like organized labor, to say what a private owner wants to do cannot be done, is abhorrent to the Constitution and inherently wrong. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Brent, give us your thoughts about the government's role in this union involvement.
Well, I agree completely with what Stan said. The problem is that most of these companies have signed up as either corporations or other government-controlled entities. They have given away, waived the rights to make independent decisions for themselves. They've gone out and got all kinds of permits, and attached to all the permits and all the licensing and all of this stuff is that the government gets to control your decision-making. And in the end, we were formulated as a constitutional republic in which the people were supposed to be the rulers. We're supposed the idea is, if you could own a piece of land and you can work hard, you get to keep the fruit of your labor, because back in Old England, if you were a commoner, you couldn't. You couldn't own property, you couldn't keep what you earn, any of that. It was a new concept. And everybody has gotten in bed with the government because the government benefits and government offers this and that and the other thing. And the end result is government ends up taking control, and then it makes those types of decisions that it could not make if the society was functioning the way the founders originally envisioned it, in which private companies would make decisions for themselves, like it or not, the workers would have to go along with it. That's all. It's my company.
Well,
I get to move if I want to move.
Well, see, but I think in all fairness, what you say is correct in my view, and Stan's view of what government should and should not do, I agree with. Your view, I agree with. But let's remember the history here. That dependence of the sort of owners and business managers and so forth on the government, it didn't just start yesterday. In the 19th century in this country, in various places, in coal mining, in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, in other areas of our life, the workers were subjected to an abuse of government power by the owners. Okay? And so that when you got into disputes, they actually controlled people in the legislatures, had laws such that they prevented workers from coming together, trying to act together in their own interest. They were permitted to implement the use of force against workers in various ways to prevent that right and freedom of association. I think for either side to have recourse to government power in that way is wrong. And that the right of owners to decide what they're going to do with their property, yeah, but they too have a stake in making sure they have workers. And they actually end up having an economic stake in making sure that they retain the workers who have the skill and experience to produce a quality product that is then going to make them the profit margins they need. And that's why I think that if you had the right understanding of freedom, you let common sense operate, but you also realize what I was trying to point out about the overall situation. None of this can be assumed to take place outside a framework of conscientious commitment to the exercise of rights. And what I think we often are forgetting these days is that word right does not mean the freedom to do anything you please. It means the freedom to do that which accords with right action, with that which is your possession. When you cross the line to wrong others, to abuse them with violence, to cheat them in various ways, to lie to them in terms of contract and other things, then you're not exercising your rights, you're doing wrong. And it is government's proper role. When people are involved in that situation, they turn to government to seek redress of those wrongs. Because the era when you took it all on yourself and went out to revenge the wrong, to correct the wrong, using your own executive power, is what then leads to the inconveniences of the war of all against all in the state of nature. So I think we have to look at the nuances here. And I would suggest that if you take that sort of common sense approach, you accept the rights of property ownership, you accept the rights of freedom of association, but you also accept that the right must be grounded in a sense of refraining from wrongdoing. And frankly, the history of management in this country in the Industrial Revolution period was a history of wrongs. And it often led workers to organize to protect themselves against those depredations. And so on both sides, there's some things that I think people should not be very proud of, and that point to the need to remember the right that underlies rights, so that you are calling on people, not necessarily with government force, but by all means of social suasion, including, of course, the influence of people who are part of religious associations and societies, to get people to deal with each other fairly.
Well, we're out of time for this segment, but stay tuned. We're going to be right back in a few minutes with Dr. Alan Keyes and Stan Solomon, Brent Johnson, and me, your host for this evening, Chief Steve Davis. We're going to come back and talk about the government stealing more of your money and naked bottoms in San Francisco. Be right back.
I like to eat. Do you like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com, check it out. Let me ask you a question. Do you like being sick? I have in my hand an incredible product. It's called TR10 supercolloidal silver. TR10 stands for a trace to the negative 10th power. The particles in this silver product are 6 to 8 angstroms, 6 to 8 10 billionths of a meter. Now listen to me. Silver has been the magic bullet for all of human existence. The Egyptians used silver instruments. We use silverware. They put silver in your teeth because nothing can grow on silver. Silver will kill anything but liberalism. I'm working on that. This product, you go to cpnlive.com, buy 1 quart of this product. It will last you for a very long time. Anytime you feel like you've been exposed to something bad, take some of this product, spray it in your mouth, or take a little bit and gargle it, swallow it. It will kill any pathogen. The average antibiotic kills 10 to 20 different pathogens. This product will kill 700 plus. Do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, do your doctor a favor. He's tired of seeing you. Get supercolloidal silver. Go to cpnlive.com, order the product. It's $29.95 plus shipping. I think it's $39.95 delivered any place in America right to your door. It's worth 10 times that. Check it out. If you're not 100% happy, just return it and we'll give you your money back. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. We absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule.